because I want to push you on the market still looks bullish, bulls still look in control perspective.
As far as China goes, though, I'm still long
See,
China. That's where I disagree. The theory, modern monetary theory, hasn't sustained itself. It's it's survived in spite of itself.
If he's as smart as everyone says he is, he will go full blown Andrew Tate. He will hire 24 college kids as interns and have them create short form content on TikTok and
Bribes.
YouTube.
I mean, let's
Yeah,
call it
yeah,
a spade a spade. He's taking
yeah.
bribes.
Taking
It's
bribes, using fake emails to talk to his son, which I mean, well, there's smoke, there's fire.
Let me go down through a list of equities and or indices and or commodities and just bull or bearish responses.
So tell me, Noob, how have you been? How's the market treated you?
The market's been fine. It's been boring, to be honest.
Yeah.
The market's been kind of, it's not been bad, but it's just not been exciting. Um, I feel like we're kind of at a point where it's just wait and see. Like there is tension between bulls and bears. I still think the bulls are in control. Um, the volatility index kind of demonstrates that there isn't a lot of worry out there right now, given all the information we have. It's, everything's within, or I don't want to say within the normal range of volatility because we are still slightly elevated, but when you look at the historical average, but given where we've come from, I mean, this is as calm as it gets.
Yeah. It seems like the market is doing a lot of digesting. But there has been some excitement. I know you were the first person to actually call out the wheat stocks firing off. Like
Yeah, they're up like
really
30%.
early. Yeah. What do you think of that? Has anything do you think it's just kind of FOMO into it as the classification of marijuana has changed? Or do you
No,
think it's actually
no,
some
I don't.
legitimacy? You don't think it's FOMO? You
I
think
don't.
it's
I
legit?
don't. Well, I don't think it matters if it's FOMO or if it's legit. I think that's irrelevant. I think when you're looking across the market at cheap sectors where there's room for some growth and room for people to take those cheap shots, I think, or relative cheap shots. Nothing's ever cheap or expensive. It's all relative. But like when you look at the sector and see how it's been destroyed consistently for 5 years now, straight, basically, just 5 years of wreckage. Um, I think there's a lot of people out there that say we've got all these different industries and this one's cheap. I've thought that for a while now. I do have positions on long and weed. It's been a terrible. I mean, you just got wrecked. If you hold long weed, you got wrecked. There's nothing. There's no one out there that's winning that's long cannabis. But it's gotten to a place where kind of looks like it maybe it's bottomed out. It's gotten to this place a couple of other times where I've taken a couple shots and been wrong. Um, I think this is a little bit of an aggressive jump start. Um, I would have liked to see something a little more gradual because weed does have the cannabis stocks have the propensity to squeeze and then just die again.
Do you think it was just a
So
squeeze?
I don't know. Um, I
I didn't.
really don't know. All
I
I know is
honestly.
I like these prices a lot better than the prices a year ago, the prices 2 years ago, the prices 3 years ago. I do think, I know we've talked about this, and I do think that there is opportunity there. I don't know. I'm not like picking stocks, which stocks at this point, like I tried that, it didn't work. I'm not picking stocks. I'm long the ETFs at this point, and I'm just gonna sit and I'm covered calls and that kind of stuff. Still kind of giving myself a little protection to the downside, but it's just a long shot at this point. That's the only thing you can do is be long weed here. You can't keep shorting it at this point.
Yeah. No, I definitely. I mean, my word, if you were shorting it even at the beginning of this year, I would say I would have
Yeah,
probably said you were greedy,
yeah,
but it just kept going down. I mean,
yeah.
I still remember like one of probably my top 5 trades ever was 2018 with Tilray when it would hit like 332. I set up a huge short position there and I shorted that all the way down to like $30, 36
It's
bucks.
now
Yeah.
it's now up 50% off of its lows at $3. And I
What
don't
a
even know if
banger.
that's just off the top of my head. I don't know if that's correct, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
imagining it's probably bottomed at somewhere around the $1 and some change mark. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Monty, do you have any thoughts on the cannabis industry? Have you ever spent some time in those books?
Yeah, I've been approached about it a few times over the years, and it's just something that's never caught my eye. In which, I'm a value guy. I look at the firm and operations, and it's just challenging for me to invest in a firm that isn't profitable. And looking at the scale and economies of scale, it's one of those industries that, unless like in Missouri, where the taxes are virtually nothing, you're still going to have someone go down the corner and see Joe Schmo selling it illegally versus, going to Illinois and paying 50% tax on your product. So, I have a hard time buying into the industry. I think there's going to be some more consolidation. I know I know I've read a discussion or two on it about probably 3, 4, or 5 months ago, but it's just something I don't follow too heavily.
Yeah.
It's currently in my state, it's overpriced. Like, um, it's in agreement with what you're saying. There are going to be people that can just go buy it cheaper elsewhere because of there's going to have to be some type of like normalization with affordability because right now the way that they have it priced from my experience, I don't use marijuana, but I do talk to a lot of people that in my state is medicinally available, and it's just ridiculous how much they charge for it.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things to where until the market, the legal market meets the pricing of the, I guess, illegal market, I think it's going to be a challenging industry to buy into, or at least see sustainability. And
I had one of my engineering friends reach out to me and he was like, what do you think of this math? And he was trying to price out his electricity costs for his home I don't know what the word is for it, but he was pricing out how much it would cost to grow all the weed at home since now it's legal to do. And then if his profits were going to compensate for how much electricity and everything that he'd had to pay for all that home production based on his sales and his income. And I was like, this is like, what is the, he was also a Bitcoin miner guy. And so who's mathing all that out as well. And I was like, okay, here we go again. It's like same game, different product. But it made me laugh, because I think that is the number one thing in the industry, though, is that if you're a company, you're looking to reach a level of mass production that you can actually compete with the black market after taxes, so that people will actually come to you. I still think that there will be a good sized, a decent chunk of people that will probably be willing to pay the slightly higher prices, so long as they're slightly higher.
yeah, you
From
don't have to worry about
yeah,
fentanyl being mixed into your drugs.
yes,
I was
And
going to bring that up.
yeah, and
yeah,
but
plus legality.
I wanna toss this theory to you two and get your thoughts on it, because it's one that I've bought into. I've been posting about it on the socials, and seeing if anyone's got ideas. But my theory that's been pitched to me is that the tobacco companies will likely take over this industry upon legalization.
That's
With
what we smoke.
with just with the amount of cannabis that they have, yes, you're talking about growing a plant versus leaf. So it is a slightly different process. They need slightly different environments, but they still have tons of land. They're proven to be very efficient farmers, very good margins, and they have, in my opinion, the capital to just say, all right, there's probably a good amount of experts that we can just bid out from the other cannabis companies to come in and just supply the expertise that we need. And it's probably a low barrier of entry to train a bunch of people to then, to do that work. And then you could probably just completely take over because they have such a huge lead on, these companies that can't even get bank loans to get off the
Well,
ground. I know.
you're not gonna
Go ahead.
you're not gonna see that happen until the federal issues get taken care of, because these companies are national and international companies, and if they go down the road of what you're talking about, then they're going to be subject to all these new regulations, and they're not going to take their existing business and tie it up with a headache of dealing with all these new regulations and subject themselves to that crapshoot. When if they are going to be interested in it, I imagine they're going to be interested in, like you said, on a large scale, and that's not going to be possible. But currently, as it stands, it's not possible because every state is different in how they're regulated. Some it's recreational, some it's medical, some it's neither, and in every state, it still brings a regulatory hiccup when it comes to the financial side of it um, through the banking system.
Right.
You have banks that won't even do business with you if you are in the industry.
Right.
I'm gonna agree and disagree slightly to where I don't know on the structure of it or the legality of it as far as the corporate side goes, but there is the option of, acquiring them, dropping them into a special purpose entity, keeping it separate on, the main operations, kind of like how a holding company operates, and then potentially funnel a loan down from the holding firm down to the SPE. So there is some optionality in that respect, but I don't know if that's an actual workaround or, something that could or cannot work.
And that's exactly, I'm glad you brought that up because I was about to bring that up. Like they could totally just block Black Rocket is the term I'm going to start using. And what I mean by that is like most home buyers right now are struggling with 8% mortgage rates, and BlackRock's out here like, oh, well, we own all the banks, so we're going to give ourselves 1%. Go buy it.
The anti-money laundering laws and all of those, the problem that I see with it is just it's federally, it's still illegal.
Right.
So you're not going to have access to the banking system until that's taken care of. You're not going to have access unless you're unless you're independently banking and funding everything yourself, which these companies are not going to do that.
Right.
The tobacco companies aren't going to do that. I still think that barrier has to be knocked out of the way before you're going to see any push from these massive companies. They don't. I can't see how they view it worth the hassle at this point. I think that they know eventually down the road these barriers will eventually be eliminated, and at that point, I think you'll see some larger players step in. And because why? I don't think it's worth it for them at this point. I don't think it's worth the hassle to try and get that creative to make it happen on a state by state level, because that's where you are currently. You're at the state regulatory level and the federal banking system. Anything that's regulated federally when it comes to the finance system is going to be out of touch, out of reach for them if they go down that road. Yeah, maybe only for that holding company, but still, it offers barriers.
Yeah, it's so I agree. I agree with all of that, and that's why, like my big thing is post federal legalization, who actually dominates, and I feel like it'll be an outside player, not any of the cannabis companies, because I know everyone's buying these up, thinking of who's going to be the winner, and I just feel like I feel like they're all losers. Anything else stand out? So wait, let me shorten the time frame on the market a little bit, because I want to push you on the market still looks bullish, bulls still look in control perspective. Because it to me, I will say the market looks like it's in digestion mode, but I still feel like we're probably headed towards most likely like 430 before we test another bull run, or potentially even just sideways chop for another, well, it's 10, like another month and a half, basically. You know,
Oh,
it's hard for
why? Okay.
it's hard. Let
You
me,
just
let me add this too,
based on
because
what?
well, that's based on my technical analysis and based on the fact that we're in September. And I mean, if you actually map out the past several performances for the past, you go like a decade out in September, I've seen some charts showing that we're probably going to end up with in between down 4 to down 12% this month. And it already is a rough month, but I hear you, and I've actually been seeing that sentiment a lot across the socials and from people I talk to, and they're still like very bullish right now. And I'm like, I understand being bullish after some sideways chop, like into the end of the year, like a Santa rally, but at this exact moment, like it's September. It's literally the worst month of it's the worst month of the year,
Well,
like, every year.
yeah, I'm not bullish in the sense that I have nothing but longs on.
Yeah.
In the sense that I'm not bullish like I was at the beginning of the year by any means. And I think we're much more fairly priced than if anything, I think maybe we are a little overextended. However, I do think the bulls still have control. And I think that that means something. I don't think we're to a place where there's enough fear out there to get any type of significant, meaningful downward actions outside of something happening.
Do you think do you have any scenarios you're thinking of for what could cause that fear to spike? Is there anything on your radar,
I
or
mean, it
just let
could
the
be a
market play?
variety of different things. I mean, if the conflict in Ukraine and escalates, more countries get involved in there, and that escalates. Which I mean is possible. I don't think it's probably likely, but it's possible. The short answer is no. I don't have a specific thing that I'm waiting to see happen. If we have more weakness in the banks and there's more of an unwind, that could definitely have a big negative impact and drag down the market. The Russell is already just the weakest of the group and really struggling here. Like it's clawed its way back up to what, like 1900 or whatever a couple times there, but it still meets that same level of resistance and gets just knocked right back down on its butt. So I've been trading the Russell to the long side up to that point, and then kind of taking a little bit of my position off and leaning short on the Nasdaq. Just kind of that pair still. I feel like it's at an extreme where the divergence between those two, something's going to give here, hopefully relatively soon, because I'm still trading it that way.
Yeah, we've seen a
But I
lot of
think that could definitely bring the Russell back down, and I wouldn't be surprised if something happens in the bank sector again. Goodbye, Russell. I mean, we've already seen the banks do. They had that little rebound, but they're right back to, people are not sure about that, so they're not. They jumped in at the quote unquote bottom, and they rode it back up, 20%, 30% or whatever. But they're not in it for the long haul as of yet, because there's still weakness out there in the banking sector. So that's potentially rates and banking is causing concern. That's a reason we have, I think, in my mind, the volatility still is elevated as where it is. China looks terrible.
To interject for
So
a
I mean,
second
there's a lot of.
on that.
Go ahead, Monty.
Oh, I wanted to, touch up on that for a second too, on the banking sector, especially on the commercial banks. They're heavily tied in the mortgage industry and the MBSs, especially with commercial real estate. So if you're looking for a credit event, likelihood it's going to involve the commercial real estate industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've even seen
And the commercial real estate industry has also changed. Like the groundwork and what it looks like today compared to what it looks like, uh, 5 years ago. It's totally different. Office space is not the same as it used to be. People are not working the same ways anymore. So I imagine it's probably gonna, as much as we all think that home prices are crazy and ridiculously priced at this point, the commercial space demand, I can't imagine there's the same level as it was pre-pandemic.
I think it's about, what is it, half or a quarter of it was previously. It's just an insane reduction. Like you have almost ghost towns and office space. It's just incredible. I mean, we're at the point where office buildings are starting to be converted to residential. I think what was that up in New York or San Francisco, and it's just astounding how much has changed in the last 3 years due to, the
And
pandemic and our
people
working
that,
conditions.
we have seen
along
several
with that,
bad
sorry,
headlines. You're good. Bad headlines also come out for even residential. So I mean, what it was like the worst when we drop. I mean, I can find it here. I should have looked it up and then opened my mouth.
While you look for that, I'll mention a note on that to where rates, debt rates, these floating rates that, these office buildings and multifamily guys are paying on their mortgages. I mean, it's outpaced, I think, in the last year rental increases. So they're in a world of hurt if
well, that's
they can't get their rental rates up.
that's what I was gonna. People that, so the majority of us aren't business owners. We've never had business loans. People don't understand when it comes to real estate. If you're thinking, you know, residential, you're able to get into this fixed 30-year locked rate, and for a business that's existing, if you're thinking that's the way that it works for them as well, it's not the same when you're talking about commercial lending. You're not getting into a fixed 3.15% or 3.25 30-year loan on your commercial building, and you just ride out and don't buy anything else. No, your rates are adjustable when it comes to most commercial lending, and they may be locked for 2 or 3 years, but then, and they're amortized, meaning they're planned. Your payment plan initially is based off of that initial rate, but after a certain time period, they're going to adjust with these current market rates.
Yeah, and I mean, you've already
Mhm.
seen a lot of people get decimated over that, but even more than that, you've also seen the lag that occurs where people don't realize that their property values are not what they used to be. There's always this denial period that seems to occur, even when you talk to people, where they're still think that their house is worth what it was when rates were 1%, and now they're at 8, and it's like, no, and I got to get the same price. People can't afford that payment. And the data point I was looking for is U.S. mortgage, or headline rather, U.S. mortgage purchase applications fell 16.7% over the past 10 weeks, hitting the lowest since 1995.
I will bring in a little bit of positivity, because I have been trading the 2-year and the 10-year, and outside of something else upsetting the apple cart, I think we're heading in the right direction out of this, just based on how that relationship is working. We're starting to see the 2-year rates and the 10-year rates come back in line and behave. They're still inverted, but they're not inverted nearly to the extent that they were, and they're trending in the right direction slowly.
Yeah. Well, the challenge with that is that, the curve, when the curve is normalized, it's steepened. That's the time that we're in. And that was kind of the game plan for the Fed, to where they held down the short end of the interest rates during the lockdown period to incentivize people to keep investing. And once they released it, all hell kind of broke loose on the curve and inverted almost immediately, and has just been chugging along like that for the last couple of years. And until
Yeah,
the Fed drops
it's been like,
short-term interest rates again.
what's the longest? Does anybody know off the top of their head what the longest inversion has been historically? I know it's over a year. I don't know. I don't think we're making history yet, but we're like on our way.
Yeah, because the 3 month been over the 10-year for what, going on 2.5 years or so now, or it's been a while.
I'm gonna look it up. Longest yield.
I don't know. I'm trying to look it up too. Well, I'm not looking it up. I'm trying to have the AI do it for me.
August of 1978 to May of 1980. And then also in September of 1980 to 81.
Yeah, as far as the amount of the inversion, the deepest was recorded on July 3rd, 2023. Or widest, deepest, however you want to put it. Which beat out 1981, which was the previous widest. Is what
And what was that inversion, like 1.2, or I don't remember what it got to.
With a spread of 109.5 on July 3rd.
So when we look at the current spread, it's sitting at, I spilled coffee on my face. The current spread's about half of that. We're looking at, point, I think it closed 0.67 or something like that, depending on what you're looking at. I'm looking at the futures product. In my mind, I think there's still opportunity there when it comes to just specifically trading. I am looking at maybe trimming a little of my position because it's by no means a straight shot. This is like a longevity trade. It's a slow mover. And which for me as a trader, it's a hard trade for me to stay in just because I like things to move. But I also kind of like what I think is the opportunity there. But I have been legging in and out of it when I feel like we get a little weakness and when it gets steeper, I'll adjust my position and then vice versa.
Hey, ask the last time we talked to you,
Sorry, I misquoted. It's a year and a half.
Do you want to add anything also to the bond conversation? Because I'm about to transition, Monty. Did you have any more comments you wanted to add, or?
Oh, I misspoke earlier. It's about a year of inversion. It looks like, not two years.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, but
yeah, we're currently a little over a year, I think.
Yeah, July of 21. It looks like when it consistently stayed inverted. But yeah, discerning on that previous point, when the yields correct themselves and steepen, that's potentially when we're going to be balls deep in a recession, and corrective action is going to be taken. It's not going to be the short end of the curve or the long end of the curve that remediates to the normalcy. It's going to be the short end that changes. So just keep that in mind.
Okay. Yeah, and
I would have to agree.
I agree as well. And so,
but as for investment purposes, going into your trade, shorting the 10, longing the 2, longing the 3 month, I still think that's a fair trade. If you're looking for risk-free income, going straight long to 3 month and short-term treasuries, I think that's still a great play.
That's been a great play for like
advise people that want.
Hasn't that been a great play for a minute now? Yeah. I've been hearing that a lot of people have been just printing money with that all year. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially with, go on.
No, go. You're fine. I was just going to caveat off of that. But
I was going to say, especially given the corporates, just going on ultra short has been the play to go. Especially, back in 2020, we didn't know which direction rates were going to go in, or the only way for them to go were to go up. So buying corporates was kind of a lousy deal. You're destined to lose money on on the books. But at the same time, buying these ultra short funds, like JPST has been my favorite fund to buy into and recommend to buy into for that purpose, to where, you know, it's a managed fund. They buy ultra short corporates and treasuries and things of that sort. Basically, I think their longest duration's 3 months or so, but you know, it's kind of a safe bet in which you're constantly turning over your portfolio, so you're not stuck with an old bond or a long dated bond that could potentially lose its value. You know, after 3 months, you have the new rates to deal with. So it's been a phenomenal play for the last couple years.
And talking about another play that we talked with you, what was you think about it? Was it 3 weeks ago we talked to you? Is that right? 3 weeks ago now? I think that's right. We're
Feels
going
like
with
longer
that.
than that, but maybe.
Maybe 3 or 4, maybe 4, maybe. But we were talking about, I think you were short Nvidia. You were selling calls against Nvidia at that point. Is that still a trade that you are in or find appealing?
Nope. Nope. Shortly after earnings. Yeah, shortly after the earnings, if anybody was long premium into earnings, they got destroyed. There was a complete non-event for earnings. It was a big fat dud. All of the juice that was pumped into those options just got evaporated nearly overnight. 2 days later, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, I was out of that trade because 75% of the premium was gone. So it was a winner. It was one of my biggest earnings winners this year. And I probably won't get back into Nvidia unless, you know, it does something else crazy.
So I have a question for both of y'all on the topic of Nvidia. We can include Apple in this as well, given the recent policy change in China. Is, you know, what are your thoughts or expectations for each of these companies, as you know, the advanced technology that Nvidia designs is essentially being banned to export out to China, as well as, you know, iPhone sales. Weren't they banned in China recently, or
Only for
they
government
have
It was
precedents
it it
only
was
for government
government,
officials,
federal employees and federal like
which
agencies
is
have to
basically
buy
everybody?
Chinese.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of
You're a
wondering.
CCC party member.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that though, because you know, they're so fascist. The corporations are so tied to the governments that um it's kind of hard to
Oh
tell,
yeah, every
like,
board of directors has to have, I think, 2 CCP members.
yeah, so like where is the actual line drawn? And so it is like
Mhm.
really goofy. I still think overall, I think you know, anyone who's a big fan, you know, it's all about, there's a huge part of the culture that's about socially signaling to others that you are with the party. So if the party's not buying Apple products, I imagine that would probably kill sales more broadly, even though lots of people are like, oh, it only is the government. And at the same
Mhm.
time, to play both sides, I did see people sharing clips of like, we're in Beijing, look at the Huawei store, and then look at the Apple store, and Huawei's like packed, and there's like one dude inside of the Apple store. But that was literally shared on the day that Huawei released their new phone, which just happened. It happened the
So
day
it's just kind of fudging it.
it happened the day they made the announcement to ban Apple phones. It's like, clearly they're working with a company to try to boost
Yeah,
some sales.
I mean, that's kind of their methods, though.
Yeah.
Let's make the image seem more extreme than it actually is. It's kind of like when we talked with Doomberg, to where, you know, everything's so murky when you look across the pond or the ocean, and you know, it's hard to really tell if what we're getting, the information we're getting from them, is real, and probably vice versa. The information they get out of us, it's probably just as hard for them to tell.
Yeah.
You
And
mean,
it's got to be a
never
little bit
mind.
easier for them, I would assume.
I
Yeah,
I would imagine it's probably not I imagine
Really?
they get very strictly curated content of what they're allowed to consume. Yeah.
You don't think that naturally with how open we are, just in general, it's not probably easier for other companies to know what we're up to, other countries to know what we're up to, rather than what we know
It's
what
not
they're up
that.
to.
It's not so
I
much
think a
that,
lot
but
of
more
it is
so
they don't care.
their internet
And then there's
control.
also, yeah, they also, like when you go to a different country, and you travel, whether it's through the Middle East or elsewhere, the, the free internet doesn't exist in the same sense throughout the world that we enjoy it here.
True. That's very
So
true.
like you could go try to find something, and it's like, just imagine like you're at your school and they have like a filter set up to filter out different content. Well, some countries have that at the nation level. Outside of a VPN, you don't have access to the internet. You have access to what they want you to have access to.
Although I remember being a little kid in school and my school's having that, and I think every grade, I think starting at like second grade, I figured out how to get around it.
I think there's a reason why schools have that compared to why countries have it, but
yeah.
that's not
Well,
the
I mean,
point.
I've been to China. They restricted us, and it did take me long to get around it. I don't know if we're breaking laws doing that, but you know,
You don't want to
I could
vocalize
also
that,
see.
Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
They're gonna come after you. They got agents everywhere now.
yeah, whatever.
I don't know. As far as China goes, though, I'm still long China.
You're long China?
Yep.
Hmm. 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 Are you long India?
I'm gonna stay out of that one.
You guys both have a different mentality on investing and trading than I do. I simply go based off of price, relative price. When I look at China and I look at some of the large companies over there in China, I understand there's definitely more risk, and I'm okay with that.
I mean, to be fair, I don't look at
But
it.
I look at the price and I think, yeah, how are you getting short China at these prices? I'd rather be long if I had to take a position, which I don't have to be in it, and I'm not in it as large as I was several months ago, but I'm still long China.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When I
I
look
mean,
at
that's
our,
fair, but
I mean,
China's always been relatively cheaper than US stocks, given that, if take like Google and Amazon, for example, they have nearly a global presence to where Chinese firms of equivalent tech, like Alibaba or whatever, they're more or less restricted to selling products within China and
Oh, you
related
mean the
borders.
country with like 2 billion people? That's where they're
Yeah, but
restricted to.
my
Like,
point
I mean,
being is that they're limited to their growth as opposed to US firms,
to a degree.
the growth is global.
They're not limited to just China, but yeah, we might not see their products here in the United States, but I don't believe that they're limited to just China. They have been reaching out and making partnership agreements with
Well,
other countries.
yeah, Europe had a big deal with Huawei on their 5G network until, I don't want to say we pressured them to ban, but we at the time Trump had moved towards banning their technology within Europe, they kind of laughed at him until they found that there was actual, spy chips within the routers and substations and stuff like that. So, inevitably a third of the telco infrastructure was just straight removed from, these European nations.
is it?
Well,
So
that's not gonna. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not
I think that
debating
was back in
like when it comes
2020.
to. Yeah, when it
What?
comes to developed nations, China, that's not China's market for their technology. That I don't think it will be there. I think their strategy is going to have to be developing nations. They're going to be. That's
Yeah,
where
it's going to
they're
be
going to be
Latin
reaching out.
America,
And
Africa.
Latin
It's going to be
America, India,
primarily those.
um,
I
yeah,
don't know.
and
India's
Africa.
been having their big scuffles with China too. You
Mhm.
hear all these skirmishes over the border. What is it, the Alps or whatever? You hear all these skirmishes over the border, and
And not enough,
they
not enough people are talking about that either. Because if China makes a move on Taiwan, And everyone seems to just talk about like that's going to be an isolated incident. Nothing else going to happen about that. But I feel like they make a move there, India might make a move to snag some of that border. And it's kind of a cluster of chaos on that border. It's a lot of different factions that think that they own different territories.
We're gonna move right back into Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, China does not seem. I mean, even historically, you actually look at the history of China. Don't go back, 1,000 years over the past 100 and just say 100. It's been kind of a bloody mess. It's not. It hasn't really been stable that long. So, and even this dictator leader that they have, I mean, how much longer is he going to live? What happens? Who's going to take over for him?
Well, Taiwan, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in his lifetime.
Yes, and they've said they will, over and over and over. And I think that maybe they make a. Everyone said Putin wouldn't do it. This guy might want to make it his legacy that they pulled it off, or some sort of, I don't know, narcissistic, grandiose, God-given, right that he must do this, and it must be his destiny or something. These people in power, they go crazy. So, sorry to say,
it's a send-off message.
Yeah,
and speaking of Putin, I don't know if you caught the news that they have Cuban, what would you call it, like Cuban loyalists or whatever, like people in Cuba are militarizing. And yeah, they're militarizing in defense of Russia now down in Cuba. So we're potentially at another Cuban Missile Crisis now. So if you want to buy Cuban cigars, buy them now before a further ban occurs. But no, yeah, it happened a couple of weeks ago, I believe. I saw it in the Journal or somewhere, Barron's or Wall Street Journal.
Does Cuba, I mean, this sounds like a little bit of a floss fag, because does Cuba even have this, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, didn't they demilitarize pretty extensively? Do they have anything that's even a threat to us?
I wouldn't be surprised.
They have AKs mounted on Volkswagen bugs.
That's what I imagine. That's honestly what I imagine.
I would not be surprised if, anything that we heard of Cuba was just a facade. Like,
yeah, it's so hard.
It would not be a surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a reason why we've had this embargo ongoing for so long, and it's just one of those things that they're not telling us.
Yeah, I think even if they were, well, the quotes would probably wouldn't tell us either. But all right, so
let's talk about because this is going to play into the economy. You got the election. I know this isn't my podcast, but what do you guys think is probably a better way to say it? What do you guys think about this Vivek guy and like some of his radical, like he's talked about monetary policy when it comes to the dollar, pegging it to commodities, specifically gold, silver, some ags, and there was one other one, I think maybe copper. I don't remember what the third precious metal was, and then also agricultural commodities. And he's talked about, well, his big thing is also the bureaucracy, which it's not really as related to, but it does come into like U.S. debt and federal funding and all that kind of stuff. Like, I imagine, given his stance, he's also going to war with the federal budget if he does get any support, and federal debt, but mainly the dollar. What do you think about the dollar?
I think that it is, I don't know. Like I'm going to give both sides of this, and just to clarify, just to try and work out my accuracy and understanding it. But there is this large amount of people that want to go back to a gold-based currency or whatever, working whatever, replace that with platinum or silver or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, right? We've seen time and time again that this hasn't worked. So in one perspective, it almost is like these people that want to go back to communism. It's like, how many times does this have to fail before you realize that it doesn't work? that it eventually will break and we have to get away from it. So why are you idolizing it when we've seen historically multiple times it doesn't work? Now the argument against that is I think that the only reason that eventually breaks is because of endless wars. Where
Well,
you have
yeah.
to
Yeah, that'll
This
change.
system,
yeah,
this
so
system isn't working either, though.
and you know what? Clearly. And I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people say that a lot of I've been saying this, but some people are saying that we actually do need to start waking up and fixing this because give it 12 more years, it probably won't be fixable. But the debt crisis is getting to the point where it's like percentage of GDP, what the whole entire world's about $320 trillion in debt. I'm sorry, $330 trillion in debt now. I mean, and we make
Like
up
the
we make
my
up a
biggest problem,
yeah.
my
How do you
biggest problem is like just the idea that we can continually inflate the currency to suit our needs as we sit as the reserve currency. And I view the difference in what he's saying. Like, yeah, if you're talking pegging it to gold, it's I view pegging to gold as different from pegging to gold, silver, which is it has utility, whereas gold doesn't have nearly the level of utility, and commodities. When it comes to commodities, then you're not pegging it to this thing that just has value because it's a rare thing. You're pegging it to utility as well.
and well, it's still the same issue, right? It doesn't matter what you peg it to. It's like you're probably still gonna run into the issue of like the only thing that the only thing that keeps me from completely writing off modern monetary theory is the Mike Green argument. And the dude's so wickedly smart that even if he's wrong, it's probably hard to prove he's wrong. There's just some people that are just like that, they're just so smart and so good with their words that they're gonna trip you up even if they're wrong. But his idea is that it's a trade-off that you should always be willing to make, is to say we will print money and kind of bet on human ingenuity that if we just give them the opportunity, they will resolve this with more production in the future. Problem being is that we've been betting on that repeatedly for like 60 years.
I think he's just
we haven't really
in my
resolved
mind,
it.
that's just the only reason that it hasn't failed to this point. Yeah, the only reason we haven't failed to this point is because of that.
You're right, but it has but you could say that it has continued to sustain itself. But then do you just play the game infinitely?
No, the
Can you play
theory hasn't. See, that's where I disagree. The theory, modern monetary theory, hasn't sustained itself. It's survived in spite of itself because of the development of the technology and because of the massive amounts of growth that we've seen over this short time period in history. But it's not due to the theory. It's, in my mind, the theory has only survived in spite of itself because of what you're describing.
Okay.
I have two sides to this as well. So, to go on Josh's point, if you look at interest rates during that period, we've been on a down cycle for however long, and we've reached zero interest rate policy, and we're coming off of that now. So, debt fueling debt to fuel the economy, it's worked for this long because interest rates have consistently come down over the last generation. And potentially we are in that correction period now to where, the Fed's made it clear we're going higher for longer. How high we go, on a long term basis, we're really not that high as far as interest rates go. We're still pretty much close to the bottom. So if you just consider that and take that into perspective, we can potentially be in that corrective period to where we're halting this, you know, hot, flaming hot, burning growth engine and kind of pulling it back now. And on the monetary side, as far as the commodities go, as far as, backing it by a basket of commodities, backing it by gold, whatever, you have to take into consideration too, what are those commodities based on? And it's the dollar. You price oil to the dollar because the dollar is the most sustainable currency. Most transactions are in dollar terms. I mean, that's clearly been a big question as of late with Saudi backing it to other currencies now. But at the end of the day, the dollar is the stable currency most commodities are back to. So it wouldn't really make sense to flip that at this point.
The dollar and
I mean,
Bitcoin.
if you try to, if you also do that and you try to pull it off, if Vivek, to bring this back to Vivek a bit more, if you do try to pull that off, you're gonna wreck everything. I mean, what absolute chaos. I mean, throughout the process of doing that, that might be what actually displaces the US dollar as a global currency, is if you try and pull that off. Like
Yeah,
that
like
might,
let's say
be
we
enough
were
to I mean, you might plunge the whole world into a financial crisis if you try to pull that off. I mean, just think about how much destabilization would have to occur.
Think of this, like when Russia invaded Ukraine, look at oil prices, look at wheat prices, look at potash prices, look at all these commodities. They just spiked. And if the US dollar was back to those, Latin America would have been crushed because their debt is denominated in US dollars. So, I mean, they would have been royally fucked. So,
Yeah.
Just taking that into consideration, shocks like that would affect the price of the dollar on a relative basis. It just wouldn't make much sense. All it takes is a small skirmish like that, and suddenly the dollar's destabilized.
And I think that's why you hear people like Peter Schiff, who are big. He's like the biggest advocate for a gold-based currency, or pegging the US dollar to gold, and he always calls it like ripping off the band-aid or whatever, and just, we need the short-term pain so we can build back better. It's like, bro, do you really want to rip that off right now? Do you really want to rip that off right now? Because there'll never be a good point to do it. But I also just kind of have to also go back to, hey, at what point of this not working historically do we kind of have to sit back and say, maybe that doesn't work?
So I have to agree with the vast majority of what you guys said, outside of the fact that I don't think, like what I already kind of touched on, I don't think it's because of the way that we're doing it that is working. I think it's working because of not coincidentally, but just the massive amounts of growth that technology in the last 50 years has brought about and made possible. Whether or not that's sustainable, if it is, then I imagine the beatings will continue until morale improves. But if it's not sustainable in the future, then there, I imagine we will actually truly see a test of this whole thing called modern monetary theory.
But I mean,
but everything else that you're saying, yeah.
Even if we can do it forever, we're still gonna have the symptoms of imperfect system, which is the boom and bust cycles. Like, we're just going to repeatedly get boom and bust cycles they come with it. You see, you're gonna take your lickings no matter what you do. And everyone says
we're seeing
boom is bigger than the last, but every boom is also bigger than the last. So I don't know, kind of.
We are seeing a correction right now. We're seeing the right thing happen. So we're seeing money being taken out of circulation. That's what needs to happen. So maybe it is a self-correcting system to an extent. But it is. They are doing the right things. I mean, they should have done it 20 years ago, but at least they're doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can equate this to, looking at the stock market too, to where if you look at virtually every tech firm, they don't fund themselves with debt, they fund themselves with equity. And their equity value is only based on the belief that the equity holds value, correct? So, essentially that can be considered their version of monetary policy. Like Roku was one of the firms I recently looked at. They fund a lot of their operations through issuance of equity, and people still buy it because they believe there's value within the equity and they believe there's growth in the equity. Whereas, like, if you look at an energy firm, a lot of their growth is based on debt funded projects to where they need a substantial amount of capital to, you know, do this $1 billion drill rig offshore. And they can't necessarily fund that with equity because it would deteriorate the value of the firm. They pay dividends, they do all sorts of shareholder value uh, type operations. So, you have to look at it from both sides too. The debt markets have their purpose as the monetary markets have their own purpose too.
Did you guys trade Roku for their crazy run up there? Did anybody short Roku?
Oh, you know it.
I shorted
That
it
was
at 90.
I shorted them a little bit, yeah. I'm still short Nvidia. And
You
I
still
got
short Nvidia
I've been
through
short.
long puts?
I shorted Nvidia. I was short for Nvidia 2 earnings, and I held that till it actually made money, which it did. And then I got even more short on the retest to 500. Came in big, and that was a nice 100%. And then I'm still short right now on Nvidia. So I've won every trade. I've won every trade on Nvidia for the past like month and a half now.
I I have dabbled in and out short of it a couple of times after earnings, but it's just not as juicy as it was. Like if you're looking to buy puts, it's one thing, but for to be selling premium right now compared to, it's hard for me to pull the trigger on it given what we just came through because I'm constantly looking at what I was getting paid to take that risk in relation to what I will be paid right now, and it's dismal in comparison to where it was.
Yeah, I mean 25 Delta was costing me like $600 when it was costing me like 1,400 before. And so I just loaded up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was like easy. It looks like it's going to 440, so I'll load it up. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking for right now is actually that test. And then we'll see if bulls actually want to pick it up. I do want to say, because you were bringing up China, and I want to go back to Vivek, but just real quick, I want to ask you about this, and then I want to go back to Vivek. I don't want to derail us too much. But when you were talking about China and Chinese stocks, and you were saying they look appealing, what companies are you looking at right now? Because man, when I look at these charts, and I don't look at them a lot, but every time I look at them, I'm like, well, nothing's changed since the beginning of 2022. Basically, it's right where it was 2 years ago. Like, what about this right now makes it look like a good value to you? Because in my mind, this could go a lot like the weed stocks, where it didn't take 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. It took 5 years to actually bottom out. And when I look at what's going on in China, maybe I'm an NPC that's become too programmed into the propaganda, but part of my mind is leaning towards that.
I'm looking at a relative to these U.S. companies. I understand they're not the same as U.S. companies, but when I look at their overall market cap, their price, where they've been when things were good, if you want to say, where they've come from to where they are, and I look at and compare them to U.S. companies, I think there's opportunities in your Babas and your Baidus. Even if you want to just get a general exposure and go with like an ETF like FXI, I trade that too. It's a little bit more boring to trade. It's not an equity, but it holds a lot of those equities. Um, there's JDD is another one that I think I have a current current trade on, and I think I'm actually pretty neutral. That was just an earnings play. But there's not a lot you can do in China as far as the actual individual equities out there that have the liquidity and the interest and the volatility. So you're limited to maybe a dozen stocks if you want to trade it. But
Yeah.
the popular names are what I'm trading. I trade some Billy, but mostly Baba, Baidu, PDD,
And
JD.
okay.
Yeah, and I was gonna
BBD,
add to
what is
Josh's
up?
point there, where every piece of news I see relating to China, it's, banks are pulling cash out of China, out of their equity portfolios. China's GDP growth estimates are going down. Their PMIs are, going down. Their property market is absolute garbage, and it's potentially going to worsen. Every piece of data I see relating to China is just, bad news. So it sounds
Yeah,
like you see some silver lining.
that's why it's cheap.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I
then,
don't see a silver lining. I just look at what's cheap and I trade the side that's contrary to what the direction is moving when I see something that, and I say cheap, it's all relative.
Yeah. But
yeah,
When
and I
I'm
guess
looking
like
at
my
taking
point,
risk to the downside, I'd rather take risk to the downside in something like a Baba that's, down 70% off of its highs. And that is an actual legit real company that makes money. Um, and I just like that risk better than something like right now in Nvidia that, yeah, it's had a massive run and it's expensive in my mind.
yeah, and I guess my point goes to, with Josh, is to where where do you see the bottom occurring? Like, is it going to be a 1 year cycle? Is it going to be a
And
5 year,
something like
10 year
Baba,
cycle?
I think the bottom occurred at $58. I think the bottom's in Baba. I don't think we're going to go back down, and we might go back down and retest those lows, but I don't think we will. That's just my opinion. It means nothing.
So I guess my last question would be, what are some catalysts that you see, whether positive or negative, or, both positive and negative, that would, cause their equities to perform?
better bad
Well, if
news.
they turned into a democratic republic, that would be nice, but I don't think that's going to happen. Um, I again, you guys are macro picture guys. I look at this as a trade. I don't know, nor do I care. I look at the volatility. I look at the relative price, and I don't care whether or not because everything, just from my limited experience in the market, which is a decent number of years now, when things look the most bleak is where opportunity presents itself.
You're right.
Um, so so when I look at risk, I'm viewing all the risk as the same. The probabilities don't change based on what's going on in a country. Like in my mind, the probabilities are still, you have an 80% chance of being successful in this trade. The
Here,
probabilities are the same. It's just the pot odds get more in your favor after a certain point. So like if my pot odds are better as far as like not the likelihood of it, but the amount of capital I'm risking, being paid more to take on that risk. I like that when I'm being paid more to take on that risk at a lower price, at a lower valuation than at an inflated valuation. So to answer your question, I'm not looking for anything in China to change. There's nothing that I would say, okay, now things are looking good. I don't care how China looks. I don't watch the news. I'm simply trading the market.
but in that regard, I do want to say that I don't know, in my opinion, if we've hit that ultimate bleakness. I'm waiting for the China's done for. into China. Like, you know, like
Then I would get longer. if
then
that
it will never recover. I'm looking for the ultimate dramatic
Yeah, but if that never
gangbusters
comes, in my mind,
crashing. It might not ever come, and then I'll just chase. But if that did come, that's what I look at as like, oh, it's juicy now. Oh, it's like the picking is ripe. That is the ripest. When the
yeah, no,
future
I agree.
projections become infinite and not time based, where it's like this will go to the moon forever, or this is complete disaster, never returning. Like that is,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I agree, and I would be increasing the size of my positions, which right now are very modest. I'm not a
yeah,
China bull, and I've got huge
yeah,
positions in there that are going to destroy me if the bottom falls out. That's not that's not my stance on China. I just
yeah.
think there's opportunity there.
We know you're a risk management pro. I was just wanting to poke you a little bit
Yeah,
about
push
that.
some buttons and see what
Yeah.
happens.
I would be doubling down.
Yeah.
I would definitely be doubling down if news like that came
Yeah.
out and China dropped 30% overnight or something like that. I would be looking for more opportunity at that point. Maybe to my own demise, but that's just the way that I trade.
So do you see opportunity in Vivek though?
I think with Trump running in the primaries, it's like I like Vivek. I like the fact that he's young. I like the fact that he's clearly highly intelligent and articulate. Um, I think he is a little radical um, on some of what he wants to do. Just people hear that, and I think that's going to be a turnoff to a lot of people, and it's going to really really hit home with some people. But like, I think he's too smart for his own good, and I think he's coming in with a platform that it is it's just too much for most people to get on board with. When you talk about like getting rid of 40% of the entire bureaucracy of the United States, yeah, there's a lot of people that follow politics that are going to jump on board with that, but for the vast majority of people, even though he's highly intelligent, they're going to look at him and see a crazy person.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he's going for the Trump tactic, which will make him just as controversial. Because I've
Yeah.
listened to someone who I respect commented on one of my tweets and called him the Trump 2.0. And that was
There
like
are elements of it.
I was like, but this guy's going on every podcast and talking for 3 hours. So let me go watch one of these because he's been making some rounds and talking to everyone.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
in a long form, he still has some big ideas, but I wouldn't call those extreme ideas. But his punchlines always sound super extreme. And he comes up with the most extreme ways to describe his big ideas. So I think he's kind of getting some of that headline treatment for people who just read headlines and don't consume the long form content that requires some critical, deep thinking, is nuanced. That said, I think he's got kind of a sketchy background, much like Trump. I'm not really sure I like these drug companies. All you're doing, we're talking about you've done big things, but you're really just taking old drugs and rebranding them. And I don't know. I feel like if that bunch of that gets dug up, probably some of it would be pretty dirty. And I think it won't take much to slander. We've seen some people try and do it.
Yeah, there has been that already.
Yeah, there's but and on top of that, I feel like he's got too much, like almost a little too confident. There's just something that makes me think he's not gonna make it, just in his demeanor.
He's not gonna make it.
Well, I mean, for the Republican debate, I think he probably was the winner. Well, Trump was the winner from that Republican debate. The guy wasn't there. He was the most talked about person. Like they can't stop doing
That's
it.
why he's not going to make it. That's what I'm saying. He's not going to make it. He's not going to make it to the nomination.
I bet if there was a Democratic debate, he'd probably be the most talked about person there too. It's ludicrous that these people show up to the debate and talk about how, and don't try to differentiate themselves from their opponents on the stage. They'll just talk about how they're better than Biden. It's like, you're not running against Biden right now. You realize that, right? You're running against the people on stage next to you. Like, let's get some trash talk. Do You're a career
Can we all agree
politician.
that
How do you
Pence
not
was the
understand the game
worst?
works? Pence is the worst?
Yeah, can we all agree
Oh,
that Pence was like the worst on that?
for sure. And you know what? Who stood out to me? I really liked Nikki Haley.
Ugh.
Yeah, I thought she did really well. And I didn't know who she was before that debate at all. And I also thought, and I don't think he has any chance, but the
Sounds like Christie.
Chris Christie.
Can't
That
stand that guy.
stinger. Well, he called Vivek ChatGPT. And,
He was waiting. He was
and then
waiting all night
called
for that one.
yeah, and then he called him the Republican Obama. And I mean, both of those were spot on. I mean, even if you like Vivek, I bet you've laughed at that because I mean it was spot on. Yeah.
It
So
was. He said the exact same thing Obama did when he got on
yeah,
stage.
and
But whatever.
and you also saw, and I think this will hurt Vivek big time in the future. You saw Vivek fumble both of those pretty horribly. Because like I'm not gonna get my timeline wrong, but there was some point where he said, "Oh yeah, I'm not that literate," and I was like, "Why did you just say that out loud? Like, where's the witty like Trump like comeback? Just they throw trash, just toss a dumpster at them. Like,
I think
don't roll over. Like, what was that? I don't like that.
so. I think him doing this round of podcasts probably has been super beneficial to him, but at the same time, it's not the way that our current like actual media and debate forums like it's very different from that. So like he has the opportunity to expound and let you realize if you're willing to listen that he's actually an intelligent person, that he actually has thought some of this stuff through and he's not just flipping off the cuff. But in the format of the debate, there's not really an opportunity to present that.
And so what
And
he
so
needs,
he's been doing nothing but long form.
if he's as smart as everyone says he is, he will go full blown Andrew Tate. He will hire 24 college kids as interns and have them create short form content on TikTok and YouTube. He'll clip up his podcasts and just boom, 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 just everywhere. And hire maybe 3 dozen. Maybe 3 dozen is probably all you need, and just nonstop do that until people go watch all of these podcasts so that he can, erupt. And I think, and then also tell them to keep all the money they make from it. But so that they're motivated to just work and do it. I think that because I see them go on a podcast, that's great, that's dandy, that's fine. But man, if you want to maximize your campaign dollars, like maximize, what are you doing? Because they're getting praise, or they're doing good, but whatever, they could do more. That's just my thought.
The whole thing is a moot point in my opinion until Trump is not running, because like there's just too many Republicans that love Trump to death and would never imagine they can't even like comprehend the idea of not voting for him in the primary. So like they've already voted.
Yeah, I mean, I heard. Yeah, okay. So, do you think Biden runs again though? Because if it's,
I hope not. I don't know.
I really, and I said this every time I say this on TikTok or I say this on YouTube, there'll be someone in the comments that says he already said he was going to run again, so he's gonna run again. It's like, it's not how it works. Like he can't. I don't think he can do another debate. He's kind of falling apart. I mean,
if they allow him to get the nomination,
I cannot see if the Democratic Party runs him again. It's
just corruption at that point in my mind.
If they run him again, they're even more incompetent than I ever dreamed. Because
the reason that they would,
I feel like there's a few idiots there, but generally there's still a lot of intelligent people. But if they run him again, I'll lose all faith in that entire side of the aisle. Like, there's no freaking way you could think he is the best fit for president You cannot run him again. It's just like, I know he doesn't, I know he's not that controversial, but even though this guy does not inspire hate, he does not inspire love. He does not get people to go together. He simply just makes every sleepy Biden. I mean, even it
exists.
He just exists. Yeah, exists. And that's what we need. We have like serious issues, and he has no incentive to fix the debt issues. You have a plethora. The Hunter Biden stuff is continuing to come out, and everyone wants to write it off and ignore it. But I mean, it's pretty serious stuff that's coming out about how much money was filtered, to Hunter
Yeah, he's
because
taking
of
bribes. I mean, let's
yeah,
call it
yeah,
a spade a spade. He's taking
yeah,
bribes.
taking
It's
bribes, using fake emails to talk to his son. Which, I mean, well, there's smoke, there's fire. So I mean, you can't ignore this stuff. Trump has another one where there's some smoke and we've seen some fire. It's really hard to say he's not gonna get in trouble on some of these things. The only argument to make that can be made is whether they're justified in doing it, because you could have had similar charges with previous presidents and we didn't do that. And so now though, if he runs again, what you'll probably see is the response will be, this guy probably doesn't even want to be president. He only is running again so they cannot charge him and jail him, because you cannot do that to someone who's wanting to run for president. So he can escape all charges if he runs again. And I've already heard a few people say it, but I guarantee if this becomes a serious,
I
running,
disagree.
people will say it's purely to get away from all the charges, because these people think,
I disagree.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, I think maybe for your side of the aisle that you're leaning towards, but these lefties, I think will be all
You can call me conservative.
Okay.
I think he's running because he's a narcissist and he absolutely believes the election was stolen. And in his mind, he's not going to quit until he wins. And that's just the way he works. I think he probably does have good intentions while running, but I also think that nobody that is bringing these charges cares if they stick or not. It has nothing to do with that. I think it's 1,000% political. It's a political play that the DOJ has been weaponized and is now being used as a political cudgel to win the next election.
At the same time, though, he could have just given the boxes. I mean,
yeah, no, again, narcissist. I agree. He's a narcissist, and he
I mean, when you really think about it,
does crazy things,
and you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, like you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and you still have to sit there and go like, dude, you are a full-grown billionaire talking about, oh, they're my boxes. I need my boxes. Like, no one can touch my boxes. And they sit in a chair next to him, like they had their own little office chair. And my boxes is stuff. I can't get. This is my stuff. It's like, what? What is going on, you dork? So I don't know. What do you think, Monty? You have been silent for this discussion.
Yeah, I don't have too many opinions on this, so I'm sitting on the sidelines for this one. But I mean, I'll agree. I'll agree to the point where the timing of trial and the timing of these charges being brought up, it is pretty fishy. And potentially it is election interference. So, arguably, I think they're going to benefit him in his running, to where, a lot of them are pretty bogus charges.
Yeah, well,
just considering.
Yeah, I want to be very, very clear. I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible, and that's why I'm both saying that Trump should have given away the boxes. Duh, you dork. You should have done that. But at the same time, clearly this is a political attack. Clearly this is a political attack. But at the same time, you should have done that, you dummy. Like, I feel like that's the fairest take you can have over all of this.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, hanging on to classified material. Yeah, that was a poor decision on his book, but you know, at the same time, Biden had classified material in his car when he was vice president, and you know,
But
the
he,
legality between the two are apples and oranges because he was VP and not P. So, you know, it's
yeah.
why isn't he being charged when
Well,
Trump is?
well,
Because he gave him back is
because
what
he
would
gave
be
him
the argument.
back. Yeah, that's what they're gonna say if you talk to someone at the
So
left aisle.
if I ever rob a bank, if I ever rob a bank and get caught, I'm just gonna give him back, give the money back, and then I won't get charged.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
So
I didn't realize that until now.
is there any other candidate that piques your interest at all, Noob?
Other than Vivek and no, that's not true. If it came down to it, I like the sanctimonious. I do like what he's done in Florida. So like I don't like his personality. I think he needs to grow a pair. Like his actions demonstrate that he has a pair, but when he opens his mouth, it's just like, come on, dude, you can do better. Like when he talks, he's gotta he's gotta toughen up with his rhetoric and his speech. And like he says good things and he says the right things, but just the way he says it, I'm like,
His
I don't
debate
know. There's
prep,
something about him. It's a personality thing for me.
whoever prepped him for the debate told him to, like, just scream. That's basically what he did.
Just be in all caps.
Just go out there in all caps the whole freaking argument. It's what it
Yeah,
definitely
like
felt like.
you can't deny just given off of how many people are like fleeing to Florida that he's done good things for his state. Like there's so many people that want to live there. To the extent where if you've been to Florida recently, there's people everywhere, man. That place is crazy. It's overrun with people. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I like what he's done. I like his policies that he supports and the things that he decides to fight for, but his personality, there's just something about it I don't like.
I also think he's gonna be so like I want the Republicans to put up someone that isn't controversial on the social
Yeah,
aspects, and
like a Tim Scott.
so yeah, someone that doesn't even. Chris Christie went up there and I've heard him talk about finances and the budgeting that he's done in the past and how he's had lots of success doing that and he likes doing that. And he seems, I don't really like most of their Ukraine stances, but just fix this budget. Maybe that will fix itself. Kind of given up on that. I've given up debating people on TikTok about it too. I'm just burnt out on the whole topic. Like whatever you guys are gonna do, you're
Yeah.
gonna do fine. But just fix this budget. Actually, give it some attention. And you know, I think actually in the process of them doing that too, it'll probably create a lot of great trade opportunities because a lot of those changes would be pretty telegraphed, and then you can do a bunch of research on the ripple effects of that. So that's I'm also looking forward to
You
that,
guys
honestly.
off of politics. You guys trading any commodities?
I've been long energy. I have
I'm short energy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been long energy for a minute, so I've been slowly just unloading into the highs. And I mean, the only reason I would be short energy is because that's really goofy, actually, because you think bulls are in control. And the only reason you should be short energy right now, in my opinion, is if you think that isn't the case. Because the only thing that would really correct the shortage of supply would be a recession. Because if the economy
I'm,
continues to be strong and demand continues to ramp up, these relatively high prices will just be, I mean, we'll
yeah,
wish they were
I'm
okay.
short it. I'm short it via short calls again at the 91 strike. So
Yeah.
and I didn't get short those calls until it was higher than it currently is now. I think it was like at 87 or something like that when I sold those. So I'm not short it long term. I think
Okay.
that it is. I think that it is going to continue to go higher long term. But I am short it right now, and I up until if it rallies more from here, I probably will lay out some more shorts and cover on a pullback. I'm just waiting for a pullback. It's a short term trade.
Yeah, and
Maybe
I
I
mean
could-
to that, I'm indirectly investing through the integrated oil companies rotated significantly out of the pure E&Ps in the Permian as far as oil goes. I mean, I'm long-term bullish on oil at this point. The SPR is pretty run down. And OPEC's pretty active on decreasing volumes in relation to their expectation of demand. So, the whole historical theory of low prices fixes low prices and high prices fixes high prices, that's been pretty much by the wayside for the last few years, given the dynamic volume shift that we're seeing on a global basis for oil. But as far as oil goes, I'm pretty bullish. Um, I mean, I'm clearly bullish on the steel industry, especially given a lot of the infrastructure projects, the infrastructure bill, the IRA, the CHIPS Act that came through in the last few years. I'm pretty bullish on metals. Um, we talked about nuclear the last couple calls. And that's something I've been meaning to put some time into in the last couple weeks. Just been a little busy with travel and things like that. But
Do you intend to look at uranium companies, utility companies, or what will be your
yeah,
focus?
so I'm thinking looking at the associated firms.
Okay.
How do you build these plants? You're going to need a lot of concrete and cement to erect those. You're going to need a lot of steel. You're going to need a lot of infrastructure to have roads going to and from. You're going to need copper for the power lines, the energy transmission between the plants and the grid. So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective. But as far as uranium goes, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are long-term bullish on the commodity itself. As far as the utilities go, you're looking at a couple $1 billion upfront costs. So near term, that might be a challenging investment. Once the debt is laid out, once the projects are laid out and under construction, I think that's when you start getting interest in the utilities themselves. So right now, I'd look at the construction side of things. Who's going to be building them, who's going to be supplying the products and materials to build them, and the associated industries that can benefit from, building these plants. It's like when you look at solar inverters, are you buying the photovoltaic companies themselves, or are you buying the materials that go into the panels?
Let me go down through a list of equities and or indices and or commodities and just bull or bearish responses.
Okay.
Oh, I
all
like
right.
this. We need to bring this into the show. That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it.
Let's
All right.
go.
Chewy.
Bull.
Bearish.
Okay. Disney.
Bearish.
Bearish.
Tesla.
Bull.
Bear.
Payment processors such as Square and or PayPal.
Bear.
It's funny because Square's on my docket for this coming week's analysis. Haven't started yet, but that's coming up. But off the cuff, without looking into anything yet, I'm a bear.
Regional banking.
Bear.
We're like totally opposites on almost everything.
I
Okay.
have
Sounding
to
like a
say
perma bear here.
I say bull for regional banking. There's gonna be some
Okay.
more losers, but overall, bull.
Uber
I
and
think
Lyft into the
consolidation needs to
same.
happen first.
No. Uber and left, you said?
Uber and Lyft
Mega bear.
Oh
for
boy,
bull.
I I'm a bear just because the business model was hoping for autonomous driving, and I think wasn't there a bad
You guys are
accident in
bad at
San
this game.
Francisco or something like that that cut the project. I don't know. I'm a bear.
Hey,
You're bear. You
what's
guys are
this?
bad at this game. One word answers, bull or bear.
I like rationalizing things, man.
Target.
Bear.
Bear.
They're turning over their inventory, but I'm still a bear. There's too much shrinkage in
Okay.
retail right now.
I have
What
to be
about the
bull.
other? Just he's bull. What about Bud Anheuser-Busch?
Bull.
Perma bear.
Okay. What about the soft commodities? Your beans, your wheats, your corn.
Bull.
Bull.
Those I will just add a caveat on that. Wheat prices are at some very recent lows. If you're bullish in wheat, uh, now is the time. I've been trading that to the long side. The four major indices: Russell,
Bear.
Bear.
Dow,
Bear.
Bear.
Nasdaq.
Mega bear.
You're really bearish on
I'm
Nasdaq.
probably wrong on that one, but bear.
Baby bear.
Baby bear.
I might be
Cub.
early to being a bear,
Cub.
but
Which one? The S&P
hibernating bear.
500.
Baby bear.
Baby bear.
Neutral.
Nvidia, obviously, Josh is bearish,
I'm bearish.
short term at least.
Short term, yeah.
What about the smaller microchip companies, your AMDs, Intels, and your MUs, those type of companies?
Much more bearish than Nvidia.
At one point, I was bullish on Intel given their turnaround with the fabs, but as of this last year, I'm extremely bearish on them. AMD,
Okay.
I don't know.
Wait.
Micron, I'm bullish on Micron.
I only answered AMD. I'm very bearish AMD. I bullish Micron and I'm bullish Intel.
Okay. So China companies, are you both in the same category, bearish?
Very bearish. I'll be a perma bear. Let's have that technical term.
What about the general overall international market? So some of these funds that track international markets and emerging markets,
Bearish.
such as EM.
Very bearish.
Can I caveat this one?
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding.
Take out China on emerging markets and still bearish.
Yeah.
Have you looked at those? And have you looked at those portfolios? It's mostly Chinese stocks in the top 10. So
yeah. Well,
I'm still bearish.
I've seen some India. It depends. Okay, it depends on what time frame. All right, but when I'm looking at currencies and some forex, with the dollar ripping up the way it is, which by the way I don't think enough people are paying attention to, and I think it is causing some of the skittishness and digestion in the market is actually the movement that we've seen in the dollar. But I think as that continues to ramp up, I'll be bearish. If it settles down some, I'll be bullish. So my caveat is bearish because we've seen it start to rapidly rise again. And that makes me think of the dollar milkshake theory starting to come back to life. And that'll be a wrecking ball on the markets in emerging markets. So that's my caveat.
What about Rivian?
Bearish. I can't say
bearish.
bearish. I see them now. I hate the way they look, but the fact that I'm seeing them now makes me feel like I have to be bullish, because since I had never seen one actually on the road, not even once, I made a killing shorting this company. It was like in the 200s, and I shorted them all the way to like $16. And then I saw one on the road and I was like, shit, I had to close those positions now. Because I
have a few more.
These.
I
get confused between these. Is Rivian the one with those like anime headlight eyes?
Yes, they look like Lucid? Emoji eyes. Yes.
Yeah, those look so stupid. Sorry, Rivian guys, but
they do.
They look so
the design is going to determine whether you're bearish or bullish. You got it.
Dude, if I'm going to buy
the other one is Lucid. What do you think about Lucid?
Has balls. Yeah. I'm bearish on Lucid.
Bearish.
What about Adobe and Oracle and the likes of them?
I'm bearish.
Oracle, I'm bearish.
I got rid of Adobe recently. I don't use Adobe for anything.
Okay.
So
Going over to like, you said both of you are bearish on
I'm
both of
neutral on
those.
Adobe.
I'm bearish Adobe. But it's like revenge sentiment.
Okay. What about Dollar General? Dollar
I,
General's been moving lately.
I don't I'm neutral on Oracle by the way, but Dollar General I don't know. My memory can't remember how those companies usually do in recessions. But
You'd
I
be
want
bullish in a recession.
to be bullish in a recession, so I'll
As
be. What's my
yeah,
ticker? What's my ticker?
DG.
DG,
DG. I've literally never traded this stock even once. Holy cow, I'm
you're
bullish.
bad at
I
this.
was asked to look at them back in 2020, 2021 and had a short-term bullish point and then immediately swapped to bear. And they're a good recession play for the sake of they have goods that you would buy when money is tight, but you immediately switch off once you have a little bit of excess income to be able to go to like, your local grocery store like a Schnucks or HEB or whatever.
Okay.
Wait,
All right. This is supposed to be fast. Hurry up, Josh.
wait, no, what
Lightning
happened?
round.
I just pulled up Dollar General's chart. What just happened here? What's going on here? This stock moves like well, we went from
Yeah, that's
200.
why I said they've had action lately.
Yeah, they've had tons of action. I've never traded this company even once. Okay, I'll have to do some digging. Continue the game.
All right. FinTech, Hood, SoFi, like the likes of them.
I bearish all
Bearish.
of it.
Okay. What about shoot? I just lost my train of thought. I had another. What about Rite Aid and Walgreens?
Bearish.
Smaller names. Bearish.
I don't really know.
Rumble.
Neutral. Rumble, bearish.
Rumble. Which one's Rumble?
Rumble. Yeah.
Rumble, the
What's that?
YouTube competitor.
Wait, what did they do?
They're a YouTube competitor.
Oh, I don't
They're
know.
relatively
Bearish.
new.
That's why they're yeah. I've never heard of them, so I'm bearish.
Never heard of them. If I haven't heard of them, I'm not buying them.
Oh,
You're not getting my
shoot.
ad dollars.
it's gonna be so funny
What
to our
about-
Rumble viewers because all our content is on Rumble.
Oh, God.
I was gonna say, post it on. Make sure you post this on Rumble.
Everything goes on Rumble automatically.
This old fart over
I
here,
don't-
30 years old, has no idea what
For the
Rumble
record,
is.
I'm long on Rumble. For the record, I have long positions in Rumble. Sorry,
Okay.
Rumble viewers. I'm long Rumble. These guys suck. What? Shoot, you just keep knocking me off my train of thought. Oh, Roku and
Bearish.
Bearish
Also bearish.
Roku and bearish Netflix.
What are you guys long on? Come on, jeez.
I mean, if
Let's
you look
see.
at Roku, if you look at the social media platforms, I know their advertisements different from Roku, but they reprice down on their advertising dollars, and advertisements the first thing to get cut during a recession. So I have some valid rationale behind my bearishness on Roku.
That's fair. That's fair. Roku's been a roller coaster ride. What about FANG stocks, the traditional FANGs? I'm assuming because you're bearish because you're bearish on NASDAQ.
I think all right. Threads is a disaster, but it won't matter for Meta. They have endless money. Bullish. Amazon bullish. Google bullish. Microsoft bullish. Am I missing one? I think that's all of them.
You
I
guys are
mean,
so
disclaimer, I don't hold any of them in my personal portfolio, but I'm more or less neutral on them. I don't know which way they're going to go.
I feel like
stay
you
out of
get
that
exposed.
sector.
Yeah, you get exposure to if you're holding any type of diversified asset via like an ETF of any kind. You have
Yeah, you're going to
exposure
be
to all
holding
these
it.
companies, right?
Buy American
Like if
funds,
you're in
buy
the market,
NASDAQ, you're owning them.
yeah,
I don't own any ETFs at all right now. I usually don't, honestly.
that's the end of my game. That's all I got.
It's
I
your
can
curse.
I
go
like
on,
that
but
game.
Yeah, it was a fun game. We should play that game more.
I'll have to
That's
come
what
up with a
bringing into
better list.
play.
That was kind of just off the top of my head.
That was a great idea. We'll probably do that now in the future for guests because I think that was a lot of fun. So thanks for introducing that, Gabe. Noob. And
Hey.
I think we're gonna go ahead and call it because we're running up on 2 hours, guys. So Noob, you want to do any shout outs or anything?
I'm good. I'm here for you.
No, thank you. That warms my
It's
heart.
appreciated.
It makes me feel loved. Monty, you want to give us have any final words?
Be sure to subscribe to the Peach Pit. Lined up Sal was researched and reported on last week. We're looking at Square or Block this coming week, so stay tuned.
And hey, if you watch the podcast all the way to the end and you're even watching this part right here and you did not like the video, you're a jerk face.
Your mom does not love you and you were adopted.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Another episode of the Growth and Gates podcast. Make sure you subscribe next week. Also, we have some a real fun one coming up. So to make sure you don't miss any episodes, ring that bell. And of course, there's not a bell on every platform, so some of you might be confused. But
the subscribe button works
out.
too.
I totally just killed the energy through the outro there.
You just like powered down
Yeah.
mid-sentence.
Have a good one, folks.